able to hear? This mic, okay. We gathered to say farewell, in a sense, to Jerry Gunn. His name is Yosef Leib, Ben Avram, Ben Chama, and when we part with somebody at a funeral, a Jewish funeral, is a little bit different. In fact, very different than the conventional way people think of a funeral. We call it a levaya in Hebrew. And the word levaya means to escort a guest on their way home. So when we have a person that we cherish, we love, we care for, and they've been with us for a visit, and the time comes for them to leave, we don't just say goodbye, but we see them off. The same way is also those who are familiar a bit with Jewish custom know that when the Shabbos leaves us, we call the night after a Malav Malka, escorting the queen. Shabbos is the queen, God is the king, and as we take leave of the Shabbat, we don't just say goodbye, but we cherish every last moment, and that's called a Malav Malka. We see it off. In fact, today, being the day after Simchas Torah, the day after is called Isur Chag, a day tied and linked to the Chag, to the holiday. Because today too, we try to savor the flavor, the special feeling of the Chag, and it stays on. And the same is very much so with this Levaya, this funeral. It's the last moments, but we want to spend a time to reflect on Jerry and his life, and he was a very special person. I'm going to speak just a little bit about it. Jerry is someone that I came to know in the very first years that I came to Winnipeg. Jerry was a person that I connected with. He actually asked me to study with his son Arthur for Arthur's bar mitzvah. And in fact, I have some. I remember Abe and his wife. We that his in-laws, but we spent time together, and have a picture of that time with I think both of Arthur and Ali. We had a mobile unit where we would have men put on tefillin, lend books to children, and I remember them being right there and being involved. But moreover, there was a special relationship I had with Jerry, and I saw he was an amazing mensch. He told me a lot of things. He shared about his views on life and on the world. And one of the things, of course, he flew a plane, as many of you know, but he told me something that he looked at the opportunities this world had for him, but also always concerned that things could flip around. And he spoke about the Holocaust and told me that one of the reasons he wanted a plane was that if he had to get out, he could go very quickly. It's amazing, an interesting thing. But he also was a person that did a lot of acts of kindness, still at hate, quietly, did a number of things. And for me personally, I could tell you that when I came to Winnipeg, at that time, people were very cynical about religion. And I didn't get to know too many people. Thank God we have a lot of friends now. But at that time, we bought a house, and the date for taking over the house was 2 weeks later than the original owners had to leave. So our lease was ended. We had to go into the house. Our lease was ended, and at the end of a month, we had to go into the house because they were leaving only 2 weeks later. So we had, and half a month later. So we had, the owner said that we could live in the upstairs. It was a duplex. Those who remember is our original Chabad. We were living in a duplex. Upstairs was a Chabad. Downstairs was where we lived. And they said we could live upstairs till they move out. And everything was fine. It was, the day of moving was a Friday, just before Shabbos. And Friday morning the movers came, and I called up the family. And unfortunately, they were an elderly couple. They weren't too much attuned to what's going on, but their lawyer told them that you don't trust a rabbi, and he said don't let them come into your house, because if he doesn't pay, you're not going to be able to, it won't be easy to get them out. And the banks, of course, would not release the money until we have the official possession. So where do we go now? So I called Jerry, so Jerry says no problem. Jerry advanced everything, and for half a month, so then we were able to pay back. But this was just without any hesitation whatsoever. And there's many other stories like this. People didn't know the kinds of things that Jerry did. When we had to start off our youth activities and incorporate Lubavitch Center as a distinct entity from the synagogues, because we wanted to be able to do children's programs, he was the one who incorporated it. He did a lot of things. He was always there, and when I think of him, he was a person. He had what he believed was right and proper. Those were the things that he stood for, and very strongly. And he did, even in the earlier years when he was not that observant as he was in his later years, he still had a tremendous respect for Yiddishkeit and was a very, very special friend. Jerry leaves over. I'm going to refer to this when I remember. I know that he has, first of all, the children that I know of. His wife, Edna, passed away just over 3 years ago, and she was so special to him. He spoke about it very often. This was someone very, very difficult for him when she passed away, and they will be reunited. But in addition, he has his children. He has Arthur and Lee, and he also has his brothers. His brothers. He has his Milton is I think the one who's in Vancouver. And he has Cyril, who's here, and he has a brother, Barry, who passed away. Am I right? Bernie or Barry? Barry, who passed away, yeah. So, pardon? Grandchildren in St. Louis, that's right. He has grandchildren in St. Louis, and he also has great-grandchildren. I should have it here. 1 second. That's right. His grandchildren, he has Melanie and Eric, and he has great-grandchildren, he has Eleanor. So, and of course his cousin from Marcia, so this who was at his side all the time and did tremendous things for him. I'm a witness to that. It's an amazing dedication that she had for him, and all these things are very, very special, and I'm sure there's many others that I cannot mention, I don't know, but all the people that he touched during his lifetime. So it's important that we think of this not as someone just leaving us, but it's a continuation, because I wanted to mention a very important thing. In Jewish life, everything we do, we associate with the Torah. When a child is born, we get called up to the Torah and give a name. When a child becomes bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, you get called up to the Torah. When there's a wedding, you get called up to the Torah. And God forbid, when somebody passes away, we also get called up to the Torah. The Torah is our guideline and sheds light on everything in our life and in death. So it's interesting, we just, on Simchas Torah yesterday, we completed reading the entire 5 books of the Torah, the entire Torah scroll. And what we do is, as soon as we finish reading, we begin again from the beginning. We finish, and then we right away begin from the very beginning. It takes a year to finish, to go through it all, but then we start all over again. And that tells us that studying, learning, and especially learning the Torah is a never-ending job. It's something that goes on and on. So it's a cycle. You go through the cycle, you go in a circle. You don't go in the beginning and come to an end, but it's a circle, and as soon as you're finished, you start again from the beginning. And it never has an end. So that's why when we celebrate, we go with what's called hakafot. Hakafot means you surround, you go and circle the table in which you read the Torah around and around. And life is very much the same. We think of it as having a beginning and an end, but actually it's like a spiral. It comes to the end, and life continues, not on the level that we see and we can feel in a physical way, but the soul is eternal, the soul lives on, and the way we connect to people that are precious to us, to parents, to grandparents, great-grandparents, to anyone who is special to us, is no longer in the physical way that we can touch, but by doing an act of kindness, doing a mitzvah, doing something that has a spiritual value, we continue to connect to that soul. So this is a lesson we take from Simchas Torah, that Jerry's presence will be with with everyone who was close to him and continue to be a Melis Yash. I'm going to read some beautiful words that his children wrote and asked me to read from them. Eulogy first from Arthur and then from Annalie. This is from Arthur. My father was supportive in all of my endeavors, be it music, work, chess, or flying my airplane. My dad supported me. My dad was stubborn. As an example, I received my pilot's license when I was 17. As he had his license, he always insisted he fly. In December of 2018, my son and I flew in my plane to Winnipeg. I took my dad flying to Brandon. The half-hour trip was 40 years in the making, but he had to have it his way. When I got to our altitude, I put on the autopilot. My dad started on me about using a computer to fly, not flying it myself. No problem, I told him. I turned off the autopilot and said to him, your airplane. As he had not flown in close to 40 years, he gladly turned over the controls immediately back to me. But I did hand flight it the rest of the way to prove to him I could fly. He never again complained about my flying skills. When we landed at Richardson International, he looked at me, complimented me on my flying, and said with a tear that he would never fly again. He taught me to play chess, ride a bike, to fish and drive a car. I won't mention the first time I drove when I was 14 at Winnipeg Beach, down Highway 9, by the way. And I had an RCMP trooper follow me about 1 mile. All the while as I was nervous, my dad kept telling me to relax and nothing would happen. I turned left and ended up driving into a shallow ditch. He laughed about that for years. Or the time we would go up north fishing, or the hockey and football games. But the most important thing he taught me was to have confidence in my abilities, to treat people with respect, do my best, and be a mensch. He was involved in many organizations, Masons, Scottish Rite, and the Shrine. I am a 5th generation Mason, my son is the 6th. I'm a 2nd generation pilot, and my son is the 3rd. As he grew older, that's Jerry, he became closer to Hashem. While we're not Shomrei Shabbat, we didn't keep Shabbos, we had Shabbos dinners on Friday nights. We attended shul and kept kosher at home. He helped teach me Yiddishkeit, and as he grew older, he davened more and more. The last picture I have was taken this past week with him holding the lulav and esrog. My dad wasn't perfect, but he tried his best. He got into computers in the mid-90s, 1990s, working with Photoshop and other programs. But the one thing he enjoyed was family. He adored his children, his grandchildren, and looked forward to meeting his great-granddaughter, who was named after his mother. He loved his children's spouses as well as his granddaughter's spouse. He enjoyed meeting and getting to know his grandson's girlfriend last December. He loved his brothers to a T and was distraught when his younger brother passed this past spring. Pesach Seder's at his parents' home was, to say the least, interesting when all 4 of them were in attendance. The antics cannot be discussed publicly. He adored his nieces and nephews. He had a special place in his heart for my cousin Robin's daughters. But his greatest love was for my mother. In the 3 years since she passed, he always talked about her. Now he can be with her in peace. Baruch Dayan Hamed. Love you, Dad. That is from Arthur, and now from Annalie. My wish would be for everyone who knew my father, Jerry Gunn, to know him as I have. So many layers with a tough exterior protecting such a generous soul. When my mother, Edna Gunn, Aleha Shalom, found out she was pregnant with me, Dad started telling my brother Arthur that he was going to have a baby sister. No question, no debate, no argument. That's just how it was going to be. Much to her relief, he was right. That's who my father was. He behaved without waver with his conviction. He was the father who brought a dog home because my brother and I were afraid of them, forcing us to face our fear head on and giving us the lifelong gift of loving and respecting other creatures. He was the father who supported and encouraged the things that interested us. Music lessons, flying lessons for my brother and I, as a few examples. When medical school curtailed my flying, he bought my first motorcycle to compensate for that missing rush of fast free movement that we inherited from him. He was the father who set an example of selfless giving. A stranger would be given his last dime if they needed it. He worked pro bono for causes he believed in, and for those unable to pay. If he was needed, it didn't matter if they were family, friends, or strangers. They could count on his help. With that came the promise of his unedited and often animated opinions. Not all can handle it, but I'm proud that my father could strip away the garbage and have the courage to say what he meant. Od Pax, Od Bellum, that. He was the son who was proud of his heritage and spoke of his parents with love and respect. He was the son-in-law who went every day to hand-feed my Baba when she was unable to do so herself. He would say, "Ma, the only reason I married Edna was because I wanted you as a mother-in-law." My mother would retort that the only reason she married him was because she wanted kids with blonde hair and blue eyes. And look what she got instead. He was the brother who would drop everything in an instant if Cyril, Barry, or Milton needed him. He was the grandfather who was so proud of Melanie and Eric. He was the great-grandfather who adored his little Eleanor and was the first in the family to know we would be blessed with her, keeping his promise to Melanie to keep it secret for 2 months. He was the husband who adored his wife. He refused to remove his wedding ring for 60 years, except when he was told he must do it for surgery. Friday morning, the nurse put him back into his bed after breakfast. He took off his ring, placed it on the bedside table, and told the nurse, "I don't need it anymore." And a few hours later, he was gone. He was the man I owe so much to, for shaping who I am, what I believe in, the type of person I strive to be. Thank you for being my father. I love you bigger than the whole outside. Annalie. El malei rachamim, shechein bamreimim, hamsei menucha necheino, al kanfei hashchino, b'maleis kedoshim utahirim, kizeir harakiya mazirim, es nishmas Yosef Leib, ben Avram and Nechama shehalach leilomei, bavur sheyitim bli nedet stok vadas kodas nishmasei, Gan Eden Tehei Minucha Seilochein Balarachamim Yastirei V'Sasekrofav Leilomim V'Yitzrei V'Yitzrei Es Nishmasei Ad Nehu Nachalosei Nuch V'Shalom Mishkofei V'Neimaro Amen. Okay, we're going to before we finish off the last prayers for the Levaya, for the burial. The burial itself is a very special mitzvah. And though we are few, we'll try to do what we can. I'd like to ask whoever can to please put a bit of earth over the casket. And when we conclude doing that, we'll finish off the prayers, and I'll wait for the casket, for the grave to be filled. So just 1 minute. In the name of all of us here, and the children and everyone, we ask you, Yosef Leib, Ben Avram, Nechama, Mr. Gunn, we ask forgiveness if there's anything we did during your lifetime or during the funeral that was inappropriate. Please forgive us. complete now the service with a pair of Tilim. We don't have a full minyan, so we'll have Tfilas and Shul. And a little while later, at 6 o'clock, we're going to be able to do a Kaddish then. But I'll right now just say Tilim. What? Morning? Morning is Kaddish. Do it later. Lam Natseach, Levnei Kerech Mizmer, Shimus Es Kol Amim Hazilu, Hazinu Kol Yesh V'Cholet, Gam B'nei Odom, Gam B'nei Yesh Yachet, Oshev Evyoin, Pi Yadaber Chochmais V'Hogos, Libus V'Unais, Ata L'Mashal Ozni Eftach V'Chinu Chedosei, Lo Meiro V'Meiro, Avein HaKeva Yisu Beidim, HaBeit Chmal Chelom, V'Revash Misol Ochlei Foda Yifte Yish Litum Lem Kofyei, V'Yekip B'Yan Nashnu Chadol Eilam, Chiyit L'Netzel Ira HaShochaz, Kia Chachamim Musiach L'Ksilah V'Yavet V'Azol Echelim Chelim, Kim Batem L'Eilam, V'Shknes M'Lidevet HaKadim V'Shmes M'Liadomis, Vod Mikol Yom Nishal Gemesid Mozeh, Dakim Kessel L'Amevachim Mefim Yisrael, Katzim L'Sheil, Shatu Movis Yirem, Yidva Misham LaBekut, Zum Leval Shem Mizolei, Achlim Yitanash Me'at Shel Ki Kacheni Sela, Al Tiro Ki Yashirish Ki V'Kved Beisai, Klevi Mesi Kaha Keli, Red Achar Kved, the Kinash Bechav Yivarach Yaduch Ki Seit Vloch, Tavadar Avesa, Netzach Lirayim Mikor Yom Nishal Gemesid Mozeh. We're going to continue, as I mentioned, with the Kaddish later. In the meantime, I'd like to ask, first of all, the children, if they're listening, they should have, Hashem should help them and console them and comfort them, give them strength. And the family and the soul, we should be able to share together from here on only health, and to no more sorrows, only happiness.